Animistic Healing Arts is an art practicing from the knowing that all beings are alive and have a soul. We are working together with a whole ecosystem of nature spirits, ancestors, guides, and other beings, recognizing that we are part of something much bigger than ourselves. I was introduced to Rachel through my therapist after doing a ton of climate work around the world and really experiencing the whole world through a different lens and not knowing how to contextualize it. And Rachel's really brought that deep connection to the spirit of all things.
Really special to be together today.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to share about your background before we dive into plant consciousness, which is what we're going to talk about, floral consciousness and peony consciousness today?
After just all my years of studying with different teachers and in different countries, I think the main thread of what I feel called to in my work in the world is helping people remember that they are part of nature, that they are part of this greater consciousness, and that there's it's already in them, right? And it's just a remembering. And sometimes we need to be in a community to practice these practices or a group field so that we can sort of reflect to each other this greater knowing and normalize it because we've sort of been normalized out of it. And I find specifically sitting in groups and doing these kinds of practices together so important as an important part of the learning, because we have to like normalize that it's okay to talk to a plant and hear what it has to say. And
I mean, we did this amazing plant temple with you, Rachel, surrounding peony, and both of us are sort of channeling this idea of floral consciousness or plant consciousness. And it's like, how would you explain that to people who haven't really touched upon that? Like, what is floral or peony consciousness?
yeah, such a beautiful question. I'm just kind of listening to peony, right? Because this is how it works. It's like, how do the plants want to express the answer to this question? So there's a deep listening that's part of how to access this consciousness. And so the first thing that really comes to me is that, plants are spirits in a body, just like we as human are spirits in a body. And as opposed to like spirits that might be more ethereal, that you can't really touch and feel, what's so special about the plants is that they're in a form. Like it's a spirit that comes, like a helping spirit that's in a form, a guiding spirit, an elder, a plant cester, as some of us call them, because they are our elders as well. The plants came before we do, and they really have this elder and long view of the whole world of humans, right? And so what's so beautiful about it is that they take this form, these wise beings, these wise elders take a form into a plant form, and we're able to touch them and hold them and smell them and communicate with them in a way that's tangible, right? You smell it and it opens your consciousness. Staring at a peony will take you into a whole nother realm. And there's this way that each plant embodies its own unique kind of consciousness and wisdom. And so one of the beautiful parts of that, that I always am telling in my classes is that I like to not tell people what a plant is good for. Maybe eventually we'll get there in a class, but to start, I really don't. And also saying, what are you good for? I feel like is almost disrespectful to the plant, because it's more like this relationship. I really like people to step into the floral consciousness or the plant consciousness. It's really about creating a relationship, like sitting with any wise elder. And I know you've sat with a lot of wise elders in your work in the world. And to me, it's the same with the plants. It's like sitting at the feet of a wise elder. And we often want to come with reverence and bring offerings and introduce ourselves and say, hi, I'll say, hi, my name is Rachel. Like, here's a song. Here's an offering from my garden to you. Here's my breath. and just kind of wait to feel if there's even an energy that the plant is willing to engage, right? Like with the peony class we had, the peonies really said to me, those peonies on that land specifically, they said to me, bring people here. We want to teach people. We want that. And so I'm always listening for even that consent piece, like, do these plant elders want to have the connection? And so I feel that yes. And then once I feel that yes, I really love guiding people into listening, coming into their heart space. Often there's this energy as humans where we're going really fast and the plants are a lot slower and they're sort of moving at a different frequency. And so it takes some breathing and some awareness and some slowing down. We do a lot of practices before we even go into the connection, because as the humans, we have to almost prepare ourselves to come out of the busyness and chaoticness of life to be able to slow down enough to even make that connection. And then we meet the plants where they're at. And then we're able to receive the medicine, wisdom, consciousness. You could use any of these words, I think, interchangeably, their transmission. What it is the wisdom. And often there's a unique wisdom or consciousness that, Peony, for example, wants to give to each person. So we can sit in a circle and everybody might have a different experience because the plant consciousness is meeting us where we need to be met in that moment. And then often there's these beautiful moments where we might all have a similar answer too. So there's like a unique part, and then sometimes there's an overarching thread. And we can kind of feel both of those things. But I never want to limit people to this is what this plant is good for, because it really limits the consciousness of things, and really inviting people to come with reverence, curiosity, and what is it that's just for me. And often I find what the plants are doing is that they're reflecting some aspect of our true self back to us that we have forgotten. They help us remember who we truly are and how precious, what could be more precious than that?
Yeah, the sense of wonder. I remember going back to school, after doing a lot of scientific work and going back to school for botany and clinical herbalism, and we had a flower essence program. And I was like, this is so skeptical, and had the most synchronistic, serendipitous, where a whole room of people are saying the same thing around what this allyship with holly is in terms of heart opening, or peony about, just this sense of like wonder and co-creation with our life, and the allyship that each of these plants is having. And I became a really deep convert. And I see that like like everyone's into psychedelics. And I actually feel like if you're sensitive, this is like the next realm for people to really come back to right relationship, because that's what everyone's trying to do, to heal themselves with plants. But these wise ancestors are really trying to get us back into that place of true knowing. And this isn't about the way I'm articulating it, but you said it so beautifully. So
well, and what was so interesting is that a lot of people reflected when we sat with Peony last week that they actually entered a psychedelic-like state.
yeah,
which was really interesting, because I do think that the plants bring us out of that hustle and bustle and ordinary consciousness and just brings us into different ways of perceiving.
100%.
Yeah.
And so these are pretty chaotic times. And I think Peony had a message to like how are we, and we can use Peony as the example, like how are we really resourcing ourselves when the world feels out of control? And with this lineage of angiosperms, which are flowering plants that have existed for millions and millions of years.
Yeah. Such a good question. Sometimes I'll like dream with the plants before I'm facilitating a circle. And so the peony had me awake at like 3 a.m. before the class. And I had some sitting by my bedside table, and they just started talking to me. And they were really saying, like, before we start getting into like what's our unique message message and going deeper with everyone, that the first thing that we really want to do is just resource everybody, because of the chaos of the times that we're living in. They were saying that they really had this offering or this ability to help slow down everybody's nervous system. And it's almost like through the pathway or the portal, they're really like a portal and so multifaceted, that they were sort of welcoming people into their portal. Like if you just stare at a peony, you can almost get mesmerized and be invited all the way in. And they were saying, invite people in and let us just deeply resource everybody's nervous system, because the times are so chaotic. And it, for anyone who's studied trauma healing, one of the like big aspects of trauma healing is, if you're dealing with something very traumatic, to also equally have something that's so deeply resourcing, so that the nervous system can sort of start to titrate and slowly digest the thing that was traumatic by taking a moment to really resource into something that's beautiful, supportive, nourishing. And so Peony was saying, let me, be that resource to help people be able to digest the times a little bit more, so that then people are able to move forward. And I think just remembered one of the analogies that Peony was sharing was, we can be like the Gatorade station stop on a marathon, where you can stop and drink and be nourished and be filled up, so that you can keep going, keep humaning, because humaning is hard.
It is hard. Yeah. So, I'm also trying to, like, for people who've never stepped into the framework of this, like, how are you walking people into a world they're where these aren't just objects, where they're, and I feel like we touched on this a little bit, but I know for me, like, you helped me enter into, from being a huge skeptic of my own, like, the things that were coming to me, to really actually integrating it into my life. Like, where does animism sit in that, and like, who kind of helped you with that way of seeing?
Yeah. I was so lucky to have the teachers that come before me. I think having people who have walked this path really, like we said, normalize it again and share it and just sit in circles with people. And, I was so lucky to spend time in more intact cultures where it hadn't been lost. And so I really carry that with me. And, that was really something on my path that I felt like, if this was going to be my life's work, yes, I did do work in connecting to my own ancestors. And I think that's an important part, trying to do work where you're really, and I support people to doing this, to like find your own lineage. For example, I have lineage in Ireland. I didn't have any teachers from Ireland, but I would connect to my own ancestors that were of Irish descent and remember their ways through spiritually connecting with them. But it was also, I'm so grateful for living in Peru, for example, for a period of time with the Shipibo people, where that knowledge hadn't been lost. And I was really able to immerse myself in a culture where it was just normal to say hi to a plant and talk to a plant. And, and then I also had beautiful teachers here in Colorado. And so I think being immersed enough, there was that healing, or that remembering that and having enough experiences, I think, to say, okay, there's something actually happening here, to have enough experiences that are showing you something's real. And so when I had enough of those experiences, then I wanted to create spaces for people to have that experience where it was normalized too. And one of the aspects of that is not only connecting with your own ancestry can be helpful, where you have ancestors who were living in this way, but also sometimes connecting with your own inner child, because often those of you who have children will see that your children are so naturally talking to the plants, talking to the fairies, talking, being in their imaginative realm. And so many of us were socialized out of the imaginative realm, like, oh, you can't bring your imaginary friend to school anymore. You can't, it's not normal to do that. And I think sometimes not only connecting to ancestry, but bringing people back to that childlike wonder before anybody told you that that wasn't okay is a really important part. And I have a daughter who's 5 now, and it's like I feel like my job to help protect that pure connection as much as possible. So I think we all just need that permission, and sometimes it's playful. Often in the classes, there's a moment where we're like giggling, we're laugh, we cry, we do deep healing, but also the plants often bring us into a playful state. And I think getting back into the imagination and the imaginative realm and reawakening that childlike joy is also an important portal into that remembrance.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you touched on so many things that I think are so important. One, were we remembering our lineage? Like, right? Like, I mean, you were with me. I got asked to do climate work in England and got to go, study the caves that were holding the history of our planet. And then, but that was also my lineage, and I was able to give offerings, but also work on the scientific lens of climate. And you and I worked in tandem, but it was knowing that we also hold those. So we're turning towards intact lineages because a lot of us have lost that through immigration and migration, but it's still in our DNA and it's reawakening. And I think giving permission to say that, oh yeah, like that connection is really real. I mean, I had crazy dreams that came to fruition when I was in England, or my Basque lineages is one of the most ancient animistic lineages. And so I think us reweaving those and giving permission is really, really great. And then I love what you're saying about, yeah, this is actually I think my favorite part about all these practices is like in a world full of sad news, this is like one of the most joyful conduits of like, just, oh my God, when you look around the world, you're like, oh my God, this tree is medicine in a different way. Either the constituents of the plants or like its wisdom or these things. And you're just like, your two-dimensional reality becomes
Yeah.
like so much more intact. And it's,
Actually, while you're speaking, I was just really hearing the plants are the wisdom keepers of the planet. So as the humans forgot,
mhm.
the plants kept the remembrance. I have the chills too. Yeah. So when we come back to the plants, they're just like, okay, we're waiting and we're here and we'll help you remember because we have not forgotten. We do not forget. Yeah.
Yeah. And like they want to co-create. I think that was what is so special too, is like even when we were studying like the forest systems, a lot of like the First Nations people were planting in forests, so the medicinal plants were coming in groves of aspens that they were tending to. And there's just like this symbiotic relationship is actually really important. And it's really beautiful. And yeah.
It feels like it's just like written in the stars, like written in the story of creation that the plants and the people would do this dance together.
Yeah.
And the thing in the remembering is that maybe as more people have the remembering and awakening through the plants, then more people will want to care for the plants and the planet
Yeah.
too and give back, right?
Yeah, I mean, a, and a part of our initiative with Ursi-co is biodiversity. I've covered climate in, I mean, 50 plus countries around the world, some of the worst disasters. And my whole ending thesis was plants, biodiverse ecosystems, and how we're retaining that. So we are doing projects that are like about, the ethnobotanical knowledge, about intact ecosystems. It's not about just deforesting and planting single trees. It's about the symbiotic relationship of all of life together. And so I think that's a really important reminder of the work we're all doing in the world is seeing that this is a vital source of life for ourselves and
Yeah. And like the key to it is really listening, learning how to listen, right? As humans, sometimes in such a human dominated world, we just think we know what something needs, which would be like your example of just deforesting and planting what you think is right. But actually, if we just remember how to come into a place of deep listening, then we will be guided.
that's really, really important. And that's what I think that's sitting, that's remembering our own wisdom and the wisdom within it around us. So that's, I think, a really, yeah, that's really beautiful. And I'm trying to think, like, is there anything else you want to share about your journey creating these plant temples, or what that means, or anything else that you feel called or the peony feels called to share? Or
Yeah. Well, I think just creating the plant temples, we're just creating a place for people to have these connections with the plants and community. And so that's, the reason for the creation of them, to have a place to practice and play and learn and heal. Sometimes people have like really deep healings. It's whatever the plants want to bring forth. People have really deep healings come forth, or all of a sudden have a perspective on their life that they just didn't have. They were stuck in some way. And then, the plants create this beautiful perspective. But when I think about peonies specifically, something that's coming up is when you look at a peony bush, it's like a whole community. And there's like so many plants in just one community. So I'm feeling something about how they're like each these individual flowers, but they're a part of a community. And I don't really have, this is how it sometimes comes with the plants. I don't have like the eloquence to put the whole thing together. Sometimes it comes in pieces. So it's just like, this is the piece that's coming through now. There's something about how they understand something about how to be autonomous and also be in community at the same time to really thrive.
well, and I think that's also like the circle. It's like when you're alone, you don't really have that reflection piece. And also, I think we in community reflect each other's beauty that we can't see in ourselves. And I think like that is also a really powerful space that we can do together in community with plants and our special avatars.
I also just feel like the transmission of the beauty to like peony is just so show-stoppingly beautiful that it could grab anyone's attention, even somebody who's not really awake to it. And then all of a sudden you're like stopping and appreciating the beauty, and you're smelling, and then it's awakening something in you, and then you're sort of captured, and then the beauty is like this entryway into all this other depth that's there by opening your senses.
Yeah. It's it's an incredible plant. Um, and yeah, clearly we're obsessed. I've been making peony medicine. So like also let's just, I mean, we just have a couple of minutes left, but like how can people work with peony in their own lives? Like I just made peony medicine with a dear friend, and we took the petals and we put brandy, and then we're making an oxymel, and we'll put honey in them, or flower essences. Like what are ways in which people can really incorporate flowers or peonies to help in their aid and healing?
Yeah. Yeah, those are all beautiful ideas that you shared. Um, and I know that there's a whole other system in Chinese medicine that uses the root of the white peony. So that's a whole nother transmission that I don't fully have. I just know it's like a big medicine, and Chinese medicine is such an ancient technology, and so that would be interesting to study more. But for me, I really like making tinctures. I also really like making salt with it. So I've made like a finishing salt with just mixing salt that you would eat with the peony flowers. And I've also done it with bath salts, like Epsom salts. I love, we do this in the class. I love just the laying on the body of the plants. Sometimes you can have like sometimes you can have a particular prayer that's in your heart, and you can whisper the prayer to the peony. Of course, if you feel the consent and the peony says, yes, harvest me, I want to work with you, then you can, and you'll often feel that yes in your body. then yeah, whispering the prayers to the peony and just laying them on your body or brushing them, seeing where you feel called, or having a friend or a partner where you're exchanging, just laying the plant on the body is such an ancient practice. In many cultures all over the world, I learned a lot about plant brushings or plant limpias, in the Mayan tradition with one of my teachers, Miss Beatrice Waite, and also in Peru. So there's a lot of cultures where just the laying on the plants of the body, and then the plants can just take your prayer and just know exactly what to do. It's a beautiful practice.
I love that. And the plant, like, yeah, what you said, like water immersion, petals, like it actually does like clean your body, taking that, and that's ancient, like a lot of my indigenous community, yeah, the
Yeah.
baths with the petals and everything. So, um, uh, yeah. So this has been really beautiful, and I want everyone to go into meditation and reflect on what if flowers are not just beautiful but wise. And so sit in meditation and reflect on your elders. And Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. How can people find you? Like, what are your offerings? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. It's been so beautiful to connect in these ways. And I think a long time coming for us to have these kinds of conversations too, like years, huh?
Finally doing it. Came out of the closet.
I have a website that's rachelweitz.com. And it's just about to be updated in the next few days with my classes. Currently, all my classes are in person here in the Colorado area. Um, Plant temples and different kinds of retreats to just connect with the spirit that moves through all things, and particularly through the earth and the plants. And then I also do one-on-one work with people where I help them come into their own direct connection with their guides of spirit.
A powerful practice. I've had amazing coincidences and remarkable reconnections through it. So, and Rachel is like one of the most loving, tender people. And
Oh,
the community just adores you. The weave you have is one of deep respect and care. And then so we launched Ursi, which is also a long time coming. And we're really trying to do nature-based products and stories that have deep wisdom. And so our first line is actually, we put a ton of flower essences and stuff in our lamps, our botanical oils, to really ground and reconnect with creativity and our own consciousness. And they were, before I even saw Rachel's class, it was like last year, it's named Floral Consciousness. And how we can use scent and our bodies and meditation to connect with our higher selves, I think is like, I've met elders on the other side of meditations that I've met in real life before I thought that like thought I was crazy. So there's like a deep power in that quietude and that connection, as Rachel says, and slowing down and using, as the plants say, they want us to help and aid that. So that's one of our goals. And then we are aiding in biodiverse projects and replanting ecosystems in some of the most biodiverse places in the world. And we really just want to continue sharing with people we love. And Rachel, you are, yeah, very dear in that. So thank you for your time.
yeah. Thank you. And thanks for all the beautiful work you're doing in the world.
Yeah. And thank you, Peony, and answering
Thank you.